gentlemen, thank you for coming to this meeting. May I request the Corporate Secretary to please certify on the sending of notices to the stockholders and to the existence of a quorum for this meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I hereby certify that notice of this meeting had been sent to the stockholders of record as of April 5, 2021 via the following methods. First, by publication in Manila Standard and Business Mirror for 2 consecutive days in both online and print formats. 2, by posting on the website of the corporation. And 3, by disclosure to the Philippine Stock Exchange. Thus, the stockholders have been notified of this meeting in compliance with applicable rules and regulations. I hereby certify that there are present in this meeting via remote communication or by proxy stockholders entitled to vote representing 83.16% of the corporation's total outstanding shares, and that this meeting is therefore competent to transact the business provided for in the agenda. A quorum is present, Mr. Chairman.
There being a quorum, the annual meeting of stockholders of JG Summit Holdings, Inc. is hereby called to order. May I request the Corporate Secretary to share with us the rules and procedures for this meeting.
The rules and procedures are set forth in the definitive information statement and in the explanation of agenda items integrated into the notice of this meeting. All tabulation results for this meeting are subject to validation by CSIP Gores Velayo and Company. For the information of the stockholders who are with us now during this live broadcast, the corporation has requested stockholders to send their questions or comments by email at the email address flashed on the screen. Questions which were received by May 7, 2021 have been collated and selected questions will be answered during this meeting. The corporation will reply to the questions and comments not taken up during this meeting through email.
Let us now proceed to the next item in the agenda, the approval of the minutes of the meeting of the annual stockholders held on May 14, 2020.
Mr. Chairman, copies of the minutes have been distributed to the stockholders by providing the link to the said minutes in the information statement and by showing the QR code on the screen prior to the meeting. The minutes have been approved as submitted by votes representing 83.16% of the total outstanding shares of the corporation.
Thank you. The minutes are hereby approved as presented. Let us now proceed to the approval of the minutes of the special meeting of the stockholders held on October 20, 2020.
Mr. Chairman, copies of the minutes have been distributed to the stockholders by providing the link to the said minutes in the information statement and by showing the QR code on the screen prior to the meeting. The minutes have been approved as submitted by votes representing 83.16% of the total outstanding shares of the corporation.
Thank you. The minutes are hereby approved as presented. Moving on, the next item in the agenda, may I now call on Mr. Lance Gokongwei, President and Chief Executive Officer of the corporation, to present his report together with the audited financial statements for the preceding calendar year.
Let me begin this presentation with a brief context of what happened in 2020. COVID-19 has clearly disrupted the industries in where we play in varying degrees. Travel and transportation were severely impacted as non-essential travel was limited. Strict social distancing measures hampered mall and hotel operations. Officers were more resilient despite work-from-home arrangements. The overall slowdown in economic and industrial activity also affected petrochemical demand and resulted in more volatile petrochemical prices. On financial services, we've seen increases in loan defaults due to unemployment and lower disposable income, as well as the closure and limited operations of other businesses. On a positive note, adoption of digital and mobile banking accelerated. On utilities, telecommunications was boosted by increased demand for connectivity to support work from home and online learning arrangements, while power generation and distribution experienced lower commercial demand but higher residential energy consumption. On consumer and retail, essential grocery categories saw growth, but discretionary products were challenged as consumers reprioritized spending. E-commerce also grew exponentially. Let me now discuss our financial and operating performance in 2020. Coming from a very strong 2019, the COVID-19 has clearly disrupted our businesses last year. But the diversity of our portfolio and our agile initiatives provided some cushion. The strong growth in our banking and office segments, resilient sales in food, and higher dividends from our telco investment tempered the negative impact of the pandemic to our overall operating results. All in all, JG Summit's consolidated revenues reached 221.6 billion, 27% lower than the previous year. And we ended 2020 with core net income after tax of 450 million. Excluding Cebu Pacific, which operates in one of the most severely impacted industries globally, our revenues and core net income would have only declined 8% and 21% to 199 billion and 15.3 billion pesos respectively for 2020. Amidst the pandemic, our company focused on four key areas: the health and welfare of our employees, operations and supply chain continuity of our businesses, cost management and liquidity, as well as helping the communities where we operate. Let me now present key performances per business unit, beginning with URC. Full year top line was steady at 133.1 billion. Despite the weak consumer sentiment, URC continued to gain market share on key categories in the Philippines. This was driven by the continuous efforts of our teams in pushing exciting products and ensuring that our supply chain continued to serve the orders of our customers. On a constant currency basis, our international sales were also flat as the strong growth in Oceania offset the lower volumes in Vietnam and Thailand. Meanwhile, AIC's higher sugar sales outpaced the negative impact of our downsized farm operations. Despite flat overall revenues, URC's net income grew 10% year-on-year to 10.7 billion pesos, driven by the company's overall cost management initiatives on top of better product mix and lower input costs. With flights dropping by 71% and passenger count falling by 78% from its phenomenal 2019 performance, SEB ended 2020 with a net loss of 22.2 billion. SEB has rolled out various initiatives to ensure operations continuity. For one, we have minimized our monthly cash burn from more than 2 billion in second quarter to nearly 1.5 billion by the end of 2020. We have also parked some of our fleet and renegotiated aircraft deliveries to conserve cash and manage capacity. One of our A330 aircraft was reconfigured to become a freighter to maximize cargo revenues, which capitalized on the growth of online deliveries and tempered the impact of the pandemic. More importantly, we have digitized the customer journey from booking to deplaning. RLC's 2020 revenues amounted to 24.9 billion, 18% lower versus 2019. Nonetheless, we were able to generate positive cash flows given our balanced portfolio mix. The growth in our office division, higher recognized residential revenues, plus the recovery of malls and hotels post-ECQ softened the dip in RLC's overall performance. We've also rolled out several digital solutions for worry-free shopping experiences, namely Robinsons Malls pickup stations, our delivery, and our personal shopper. Within our streamlined operations and cost control, EBITDA remained positive across the business units and totaled 13.7 billion pesos in 2020. However, additional depreciation from newly opened properties and additional interest expense from its 13.2 billion bond issuance last July 2020 pulled down RLC's full-year net income to 5.3 billion pesos. JG Summit Petrochemicals ended 2020 with full-year revenues of 21.3 billion, 27% lower versus 2019. While the pandemic affected Petrochem's performance in the first half of 2020, the resurgence of demand in the latter half helped improve overall financial results. Polymer sales grew 14% year-on-year, and the company gained market share as it capitalized on resilient demand for packaging of essential goods and agricultural requirements. Operational enhancements also resulted in higher full-year plant utilization since the restart of its integrated cracker and polymer operations in March 2020. JD Summit Petrochemical reported a full-year EBITDA of 451 million pesos, aided by improving margins, as it nears the final stages of its $1.1 billion expansion project, with some of its key components coming online in the second quarter of 2021. This will improve overall profitability as the company starts to capture more margins with its new downstream product. Robinsons Bank's net income rose by 30% from last year due to an increase in our loan portfolio, higher margins, as well as trading gains. The bank's non-performing loan ratio of 2.98% as of the end of 2020 remained lower than industry average amidst the risks posed by the pandemic. Our bank also accelerated its digitalization and customer-centric initiatives, including Robinsons Bank Digital, or RDX, the bank's mobile app, or Quicker, a cashless payment solution using a QR code, and Our Bank Mo, a banking agent that will provide basic financial services, among others. Moreover, there has been exponential growth in its electronic funds transfers via InstaPay and PesoNet, in line with the increased adoption of e-payments and the shift towards digital commerce. On our core investments, fiscal year 20 equity in net earnings of associated companies and joint ventures fell 43% year-on-year to 7.6 billion pesos, primarily due to non-recurring items in both 2019 and 2020. Meanwhile, higher dividends from our investment in PLDT tempered lower electricity revenues in Meralco and Global Business Power. Excluding the impact of one-offs, total recurring earnings from our core investments only declined by 7% year-on-year. As you may know, part of JG Summit's digital transformation was the establishment of JG Digital Equity Ventures, or JG Dev, and Data Analytics Ventures Inc., or DAVI, in 2018 and 2019 respectively. These two ventures are currently trailblazing the group's next generation of digital businesses. JG Dev, the group's venture capital arm, is investing its $50 million fund in sustainable and scalable fintech startups in what would have impact in the Southeast Asian markets and create value to the JG ecosystem. In 2020, JG Dev assessed well over 100 startups and made 4 direct investments. DAVI, on the other hand, aims to unlock value from the customer data across the JG Summit ecosystem through precision marketing, customer intelligence, performance dashboards, and predictive analytics. It intends to manage the largest digital lifestyle rewards program, anchoring on Robinsons Rewards and GetGo. In 2020, it focused on e-commerce engagement, making significant improvements to its Robinsons Rewards loyalty program. It also partnered with Facebook to launch a first-in-the-world online-to-offline solution and teamed up with Nielsen to provide customized product offers to its customers through big data analytics. JG Summit's balance sheet at the end of 2020 remained healthy, with gearing and net debt to equity ratios at 0.78 and 0.6 respectively. At the parent level, net debt of 73.8 billion was even lower than December 2019. Our successful 10-year 4 and 1/8 US dollars 600 million bond issuance in July 2020 reduced the blended cost of the parent's long-term debt to 4.04%. Last October 2020, we've also further strengthened JG Summit's capitalization by declaring and issuing 5% stock dividends. And just this February, we have settled a 5.3 billion maturity and have exercised our early redemption option for the remaining 126 million originally due on 2024. Finally, we continue to receive stable stream of cash dividends, which totaled 14 billion pesos in 2020. To manage our cash flows given the COVID-19 situation, from an original 2020 capex plan of 82.8 billion, we ended up spending only 37.3 billion for 2020. The majority was for petrochemicals expansion projects and RLC's investment portfolio and land acquisition. 6.7 billion was for URC's mega DC in Pampanga, as well as capacity expansions in branded consumer foods international, as well as agro-industrial foods. Cebu Air also acquired one A321neo, and Robinsons Bank spent for various business development initiatives. Our 2021 budget is 28% higher versus 2020 at 47.8 billion pesos. Most of our business units plan to spend at the same level or lower than their 2020 spending, except for RLC to further expand its investment portfolio and land bank, and URC to improve its recently acquired sugar mill and distillery, as well as its investments in its supply chain transformation initiatives. During this period, we've seen key external trends that could potentially impact our businesses in 2021. First, COVID-19 remains a significant risk to people's lives and the economy. We believe that consumer confidence will only materially improve once we've reached herd immunity, which will only be addressed by COVID-19 vaccines. Second, we are also seeing the rise of stakeholders who are closely looking into ESG when evaluating companies. Thus, we will continue to implement our roadmap and our progress on sustainability. Third, with the rapid change in consumer behavior and preferences, we need to continually adapt and innovate. We'd also have to watch out for loan defaults given the overall decline in disposable incomes. Fourth, finally, online and contactless transactions have become more desirable as evident in the rise of e-commerce platforms, digital banking, food delivery services, online streaming, and other digital services. With these realities in mind, we will continue product innovation in URC, taking into account the recent consumer trends. We will sustain improvements and savings from supply chain transformation and lean manufacturing initiatives, and scale up agile ways of working across the organization. We will continue to expand RLC's business to diversify and invest in scale, and grow our land bank through strategic property acquisitions. We will implement and constantly revisit Cebu's future size and shape and its business transformation plan. Our successful 12 billion peso convertible preferred shares issuance and our recently signed 16 billion 10-year term loan facility will further strengthen Cebu's balance sheet for a longer liquidity runway. For petrochemicals, our key focus areas are: first, project completion and startup execution; second, operational excellence and organizational readiness for upcoming new businesses; and third, innovation and market development with its expanded product portfolio, as well as fourth, planning for future growth. We will also continue to accelerate Robinson Bank's digital banking services. Lastly, we have dedicated a team to manage the group's vaccination program this year. We are currently in the planning stage with our partner healthcare service providers to prepare for the actual rollout once our vaccines arrive. With the immediate shifts in consumer behavior, we believe we have to be agile in addressing the ever-changing needs for our customers and stakeholders for long-term sustainability. Thus, it is imperative that we embed strong customer-centric discovery and insighting processes as well as accelerate our digital transformation. Let me now give you an update regarding our sustainability journey anchored on our 5 key focus areas. First, on climate action. RLC continuously invests in renewable energy through rooftop solar installations. URC's lean manufacturing program is also currently being rolled out across its facilities. And in 2020, 86,594 seedlings were planted under JG Petrochemical's 1 Million Trees project. On providing better choices, Cebu Pacific received a perfect 7 score on COVID-19 safety and compliance from airline ratings. We have also established URC's wellness criteria that tackles product renovation towards health and nutrition. And Robinsons Bank also launched Simple Savings to help address financial inclusion on employee engagement and development. We have partnered with LinkedIn to make learning more accessible and convenient to our employees. URC has also released a university virtual learning plan to help employees gain new skills online. On resource efficiency and circularity, Robinsons Malls partnered with USAID to develop a solid waste management system, and URC started waste profiling to push zero waste to landfill. Finally, on shared success, URC launched the Sustainable Potato Program with the Department of Agriculture to help improve local potato farmers' productivity, while GBF also allocated more than 150 million for PPEs, hospitals, and school supplies. As we cautiously embark on this challenging path to recovery, our utmost priority remains to be the health and welfare of our employees and our customers. Aligned with our purpose, we will also continue to provide better choices and the best value for our customers while ensuring business continuity and the exercise of prudence in liquidity and cost management. We will support the government and the communities where we operate as the vaccination program is rolled out. To our shareholders, board of directors, and customers, on behalf of JG Summit, I would like to thank you all for your continued support and trust in the group. And to my colleagues in JGS, I am truly grateful and humbled to lead this organization. I am proud of all your contributions, and I look forward to the day when we could all look back to these events as just part of our passage to our stronger and better normal. Thank you, and please stay safe.
Thank you. May I call on the Corporate Secretary to present the results of the voting for the approval of the audited financial statements for the preceding calendar year.
Mr. Chairman, we are pleased to report that stockholders representing 83.13% of the total outstanding shares of the corporation have approved the audited financial statements of the corporation for the preceding calendar year as presented. The report of the President is hereby also duly noted.
The report of the President is accordingly noted, and the audited financial statements for the preceding calendar year are hereby approved as presented. We now go to the election of the members of the Board of Directors. May I request the Corporate Secretary to read the names of the incumbent members of the Board of Directors.
The incumbent members of the Board of Directors are Mr. James L. Go, Mr. Lance Y. Gokongwei, Ms. Lily G. Ngochua, Mr. Patrick Henry C. Go, Mr. Robina Y. Gokongwei Pe, Mr. Johnson Robert G. Go Jr., and Mr. Cirilo Pino Noel. And the independent directors are Mr. Jose T. Pardo, Mr. Renato T. De Guzman, and Mr. Antonio L. Go.
Thank you. May we now have the list of nominees for election to the Board of Directors and the voting results.
Mr. Chairman, In accordance with the nomination process stated in the bylaws of the corporation, the following have been nominated as members of the Board of Directors and have consented to their nomination: Mr. James L. Go, Mr. Lance Y. Gokongwei, Ms. Lily G. Ngo Chua, Mr. Patrick Henry C. Go, Ms. Robina Y. Gokongwei Pe, Mr. Johnson Robert G. Go Jr., Mr. Cirilo P. Noel, and as independent directors, Mr. Jose T. Pardo, Mr. Renato T. De Guzman, Mr. Antonio L. Go, and Mr. Artemio V. Panganiban. There being no other nominations, the affirmative votes in favor of those nominated have been tabulated, and they have received enough votes for election to the board. The following are hereby declared as the duly elected members of the Board of Directors of the corporation for the ensuing year, until their successors shall have been elected and qualified: Mr. James L. Go, Mr. Lance Y. Gokongwei, Ms. Lily G. Ngo Chua, Mr. Patrick Henry C. Go, Ms. Robina Y. Gokongwei Pe, Mr. Johnson Robert G. Go Jr., Mr. Cirilo P. Noel, and as independent directors, Mr. Jose T. Pardo, Mr. Renato T. De Guzman, Mr. Antonio L. Go, and Mr. Artemio V. Panganiban.
Let us move on to the next item in the agenda, which is the appointment of the external auditor of the corporation. May I call on the corporate secretary to present the results of voting for this agenda item?
Mr. Chairman, the accounting firm of CSIP Gores Velayo & Company has been nominated as the external auditor of the corporation for the calendar year 2021. After tabulation of the votes, the appointment of CSIP Gores Velayo & Company as external auditor of the corporation was approved by stockholders representing 79.53% of the total outstanding shares of the corporation.
Thank you. The accounting firm of CSIP Gores Velayo & Company is hereby appointed as the external auditor of the corporation for the calendar year 2021. Let us proceed to the next item in the agenda, which is the ratification of the acts of the Board of Directors and its committees, officers, and the management of the corporation.
Mr. Chairman, the list of acts for ratification of the stockholders are shown right now on the screen. Copies of the said list have also been distributed to the stockholders present by showing the link and QR code to the said list. List on the screen prior to the meeting. After tabulation of the votes, we are pleased to report that stockholders representing 83.12% of the total outstanding shares of the corporation have confirmed and ratified the acts of the board of directors and its committees, officers, and the management management of the corporation for the period beginning from the last annual stockholders meeting up to the current stockholders meeting as duly recorded in the corporate books and records of the corporation.
Thank you. The acts of the board of directors and its committee, officers, and management of the corporation for the period beginning from the last annual meeting of the stockholders up to the current meeting of the stockholders as duly recorded in books and records of the corporation are hereby confirmed and ratified. We will now respond to questions which were earlier submitted via email. The questions will be answered by the President and CEO, Mr. Lance Gokongwei.
Thank you very much to those who have sent us their questions. We have picked two questions that have been repeating from submissions of the stockholders. The first question is, given the pandemic, what are you seeing in terms of the future of the airline industry, and how do you plan to support Cebu Pacific? The government's efforts to set directions for a unified view on travel restrictions provided a substantial improvement in bookings, which demonstrates that there is still genuinely significant pent-up demand for travel. We have implemented and are constantly revisiting our future size and shape, as well as our business transformation plans. Our objective is to come out at least 25 to 30% more efficient versus where we were before the pandemic. And with our refleeting strategy, Cebu Pacific will be one of the airlines with the lowest carbon emissions per passenger kilometer traveled. Globally, we have seen that China and the US domestic travel have already gone back to 90% of their pre-COVID levels. And we're probably just a few months behind such a recovery. This emerging hybrid travel where people go on vacation but still work remotely may also help improve demand prospectively. We've also successfully completed Cebu Pacific's capital raising exercise to ensure continuous operations despite the existing challenge. We managed to raise 40 billion pesos in cash via a combination of convertible preferred shares, convertible bonds, as well as standby credit facilities from local banks. This signifies that investors and creditors continue to believe in the sound fundamentals of Cebu Pacific and its prospects of recovery in the near term. The second question is, what is your vaccination rollout plan? In support of the government's national vaccination program, we set up in January the COVID Protect, the Gokongwei Group's vaccination program to provide vaccines for all our employees and third-party workers, and access to vaccines for employees' dependents. To date, we have secured enough vaccines from AstraZeneca, Covovax, Novavax, and Moderna to cover our group's entire requirements. And in solidarity with other private companies and businesses in the country, we've also joined the Dose of Hope tripartite initiative, where we ordered 130,000 doses of AstraZeneca, half of which will be donated to the government. We anticipate the arrival of the vaccines in June onward, and will be rolled out in phases. Prioritization of who will be vaccinated first in the Gokongwei Group will be done in accordance with Department of Health guidelines. Our vaccine team and HR units, together with our healthcare services provider and various partners, are deep in preparations for a safe and convenient rollout when our vaccines arrive. While the health and safety of our employees is our primary concern, we recognize that vaccination is a voluntary choice. Thus, we have been conducting information campaigns consisting of webinars, infographics, and frequently asked questions, among others, to help our employees make an informed decision on their vaccination choice. We highly anticipate and very much look forward to the arrival of our vaccines, as this will provide us with an additional layer of protection against the virus that is so vital for our economic recovery.
Thank you. Are there any other matters to be taken up for consideration of the stockholders?
There is none, Mr. Chairman.
Despite the negative impact of the pandemic in our 2020 financial performance, I'm pleased to announce that the board has approved a regular cash dividend in the amount of 38 centavos per share to stockholders of record as of June 11, 2021, which shall be paid on July 7, 2021. 2020 was indeed a very challenging year for each and every one of us, given the disruption caused by the COVID-19 in our lives and our economy. It has clearly altered consumer behavior and have accelerated significant shifts in the way we operate business. What is key is that we are able to quickly pivot and address these new customer demands. While getting back to pre-pandemic, that will also depend on the successful rollout of the vaccines. I'm confident that we can turn the business around as all of us work together as an enterprise and set up key strategic capabilities for the future. This ends the 2021 Annual Stockholders Meeting of JG Summit Holdings, Inc. A link where a replay of this meeting may be viewed shall be made available at the website of the corporation. Thank you very much for joining. Please take care and stay healthy.